Shalom, people. This is Brother Laos coming at you with another video. And making this video uh, in reference to the two other videos that I've made about reparations. And this probably will not be the last time that you hear me speaking about the reparations. Even before I came into the knowledge that we were the people. Uh, the thought of reparations had been a topic that I had studied many years ago when I read about Randall Robinson and his Trans-Africa uh, agency that had been seeking to get financial compensation for the descendants of slaves. So I kind of knew a little bit about it, and I had also read some articles in the late 80s about John Conyers, about how every year he went to the floor of the Congress and tried to present a bill forth uh, to get reparations for the descendants of slaves here in America. And it was kind of like, I guess, after a while, it became like a running joke type of thing. But I think from the time that he had got into the Congress until he retired, he faithfully presented it, and then of course they never brought it up for any kind of vote or anything like that, even to get it on the floor to debate it. But and I could be wrong about that, but as far as I know, it was basically, oh, here comes old John again with his bill for reparations. Okay, let's let him get up and do his little speech, and then send him on down. But I thank the Most High Yah that he did that, and Randall Robinson and many others throughout the last couple hundred years brought forth the subject of reparations, because uh, that definitely would have been a sticking point that those that didn't want to deny us reparations would have had, is that why come you didn't ask for it before? Well, record has shown that we have asked for it many times before, and it has been shot down. And so I thank the Most High Yah for that. I also want to key back in on when I finish uploading, you'll see one of my teachings I had about Babylon had her chance. I want to key back in on the fact that I do, at least in my estimation, see many of the plagues that were in Egypt, and some that weren't, that's being brought up in the news today, not only in America, but in many other European and African nations, because as we know, the European powers was not the only ones that was involved in the transatlantic and trans-African slave trade. And one of the things that I would like to find out, and and when I get a chance to research, is how many slaves were taken into China, because there's a theory, or I don't know if it's a theory, it could be fact. Gotta research and find out that the Great Wall of China, that China built to keep out the Goths and the Visigoths and the Huns and all those other kinds of people that came from the Caucasus Mountains, that it was built by some of the slaves that were brought by the trans-African slave trade into Asia. It's not a subject that's not talked about in as much depth as it needs to be, and definitely probably be something that the black Muslims in the Nation of Islam probably wouldn't be too happy about if we put as much veracity as we do the transatlantic as we did the much veracity as we do with the transatlantic as we would with the trans-African, because I think the thing that really made the trans African not seem as harsh is that for the most part they kept most of them their need when they brought our people, the descendants of Hebrews, was that they wanted to keep the women to make harems, and the men they wanted to castrate them and put them in their armies and work their fields and everything. And so the men died off pretty quickly, but the women, of course, they wasn't trying to kill them. They was trying to, basically have many babies and have as much sex as they wanted. So the lasting legacy of the trans-African slave trade is that it created an entire, I don't want to say a new race, but a new class of people from the rape of the black African Hebrew woman. You came up with the Middle Eastern person, and I could be wrong, but I think even the word Arab means something to the effect of being mixed or something like that. I'm not sure, but surely we know the original Arab people are Ishmaelites, were black people, were dark. They were the seed of Abraham. So the talk of reparations and recompense is going to apply to those nations also that took us into captivity. And of course, the subject of the Muslim nations repairing the damage that they done to the descendants of, well, there ain't no descendants. That's the thing. It's not too many descendants at all that's left. I mean, there's pockets. You got the CDs. You got, I think, the Kafir people that's in Malaysia, Indonesia. Can't remember. But the transatlantic is much more evidence, is much more peoples that that are still in existence today from that one than the trans-African, because like I said, most of the men were castrated so they couldn't reproduce and they were killed. Now I do understand that in southern Iraq, in Basra, we was watching a video several years ago where they showed they had some descendants of some of the slaves that were brought into southern Iraq to dig the canals and everything, and that they have, they have a pretty healthy population there. Not as large, of course, but the thing you're gonna get into problems I believe that you will get into when you start dealing with Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, and all those, is that a lot of the black people that are there, they are Shemitic people, but they don't come from this is what I believe, but they don't necessarily come from the Israelites, the 10 tribes that were taken into captivity, or Judah. I think a lot of these are the ancient Assyrians, which were black people. They were, and the Emilites, and even some of the darker races of the original Japhetic people, the ones like the ancient Persians, which were dark people, the ancient Babylonians, which were dark people. Now, some of them were Hamites, some of them were Japhite, and some of them were Shemites. Everybody was black. And so you have some of these indigenous people that are black. So we have to, I'm going to say for myself, I'll be very careful of, from saying, oh yeah, all the people in southern Iraq, those are Israelites. Some of them were brought from Africa, but not all of them. Even the ones that came from Africa might not all be Hebrews. They could be some of the Ishmaelites and the Edomites and some of the Hamites that were caught up in the trans-African slave trade. And so this is why I think looking at some of Ronald Dalton Jr., he got some great videos, Hebrews to Negroes, and where he talks about the DNA, and he does a much better job, showing, the admixture of the E1B, E1B, and E1B, E1A, and he kind of shows how it's a hodgepodge when you get off in there. And the further west you get, it becomes more clear cut, with us, with the E1B1A, and also in Western Africa, with the E1B1A and B. But when you start getting closer, like I said, to modern day Israel and the Middle East and all them places, now the Sidi people, I would be interested to see. I believe that there's probably a significant amount of them, I believe, that are Hebrews. I'm not saying that all of them are, because you can, when you watch some films showing them, you can tell that some of them have had been mixed in with some of the indigenous population. Indeed, I think in one of Ronald Dalton Jr.'s film, he talks about the Dravidian people and some of the others that some of them are probably maybe the ancient Persians that were dark people, because apparently most of the quote unquote what you call the Middle East, the Arab people, and not all of them, but a lot of them are Turkish in origin. They are from when the Ottoman Empire, which to me, from what I understand when I studied in school, it was the greatest. It has the greatest caliphates, as in codifying everything and spreading it out. Basically, Japhetic. Basically, look at Turkey, look at Croatia and the Balkans and all that. These were Japhetic people that convert, and this is where the Khazarian thing comes in. About not only did some of the Khazarian people, which were of the same Turkish stock, convert to Talmudic Judaism, some of them converted to Islam from their tribal phallic worship religions. Basically, those that came out of the Caucasus Mountains that were, it's been shown had the Neanderthal gene in them, and came down and gave the Roman Empire a run for its money, the Huns and the barbarians and all them. Once they got amassed so much wealth, they wasn't satisfied with just being savage warriors. They wanted to educate themselves. And back at that time, the best way to educate yourself was to convert to a religion, because the priests of all religions, especially at that time, held all the books of knowledge. They were the scientists, they were the lawyers. They held all that. So if you was a king, you had a massive amount of gold, you would call in a bunch of priests, because they would teach you how to read, write, count, all that. If you ever watched years ago when we had cable TV, it was a series that came on the History Channel called The Vikings. And if you ever had the time to go back and just watch the first 2 or 3 seasons, you'll see in one of the, I think it might have been the very first season, the Vikings had caught a Catholic priest, and when they seen him with the book and the cross and everything, the Vikings wanted to kill him, but the leader of the group, I forgot what the character's name. He said, no, 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 no. He has a book, and then he basically said, this guy's gonna be with me, because it was one of the Vikings who was also some kind of shaman or priest himself. He didn't want him to live. He wanted to kill him because he was like, his gods ain't our God and all this kind of stuff. But the leader of the group, he understood, hey, I have aspirations to be greater than just going around just raiding, you know, sacking villages and everything. He had in his mind to learn how to use tactics and intrigue and knowledge and all that stuff to win battles instead of at the edge of the sword. And you can see this in the fact that when you get into a lot of the Scandinavian countries, now I'm not saying that they practice it. Of course, a lot of them not practicing quote unquote Christianity, but after they became quote unquote civilized, just like most European nations, they made one Christian church the state religion. They said this is gonna be the religion for everybody in the state. Doesn't mean that everybody practice it, but they did that, like I said, so that they could get contacts to the monasteries and the books and everything. Because think about this: when the quote unquote Dark Ages came, one of the reasons why it was called that, not just because that the black Moors and the Hebrews that had been scattered into Europe by the Roman army before they fell. One of the reasons why it was called the Dark Ages is because the Catholic Church had basically took a lot of the knowledge from all the promises and had hid it in the Vatican and other repositories throughout Europe. And some of it was written in archaic languages and stuff that they didn't understand. So when the Moors and them came in, who had the knowledge, because the knowledge that a lot of Japhetic people came from, you know, the lands of Shem and Ham, they was able to translate a lot of these works and everything, and the Catholic religion compiled all this stuff and kept it in the Vatican, so that when the time was right, and as the power of the caliphates throughout Europe was weakening, because if you go look on, you can look at Tariq Nasheed's his Hidden Colors, you'll see that they held sway over Europe for hundreds and hundreds of years. But as they start weakening with this, which it wasn't new knowledge, it was just knowledge that they had real. The Roman Catholic Church had all these barbarians that now had been somewhat civilized, and they had this knowledge that they could relaunch this false church thing, this Constantine Christian, and that was what the Renaissance was. And it was an explosion of not new knowledge, but knowledge that had been translated and codified and everything by the Moors. And then when they got the upper hand, they brought all this stuff out. They changed the images of what was really like. They changed some of the names, places, took some things out. You know, we know they took a lot of the books of the Bible out. They even had, I think at one time, they didn't even have the book of Revelations in there. But that's what happened. And so, of course, he that gets to rewrite history can set the course for the world. And so um, as we see the rise of the the, the papacy and the rise of also Protestantism at the same time, which was in competing uh, against the Catholic nations. One thing they all had in common was that the darker skinned peoples of the world had to be enslaved. And so after they got the jump start with the free labor, um, you know, and they understood this thing. Some of the nations understood we can't keep this perpetual slavery thing going on for too long. We're gonna have to switch up and make it something different. They took some of the knowledge that they had gained from the occult and other things in order to try to switch up and invent new ways to enslave people. Maybe not with chains, but in their mind. And of course, you know, some of them made it feel bad about the past, but they didn't feel bad enough that they would make amends for it, especially when you are being secretly taught that it was the divine right of the European nations to rule over the world. So that whenever you might have freed some people, there was no expectation of them getting any repayment for anything. If anything, if they decided to stay on, you're gonna make life harder for them just for them asking for their freedom. And they had pretty much practiced this on their own people in Europe with the feudal system and serfs and all that. So they had plenty of practice of this when they got us into slavery. But we know that there was a lot of revolts in Europe by people that was tired of ruled by the monarchy. And so, you know, a lot of those people that was uprising against the um, governments of Europe, these same people, when they found the new lands, the monarchy or the government that was in charge said, okay, good, you got new land you can conquer and you can rule yourself the way you want to. And that's how you found a lot of colonies like Canada and America, Australia. Now, of course, these people that went there had to borrow money so that they was indebted to not the nation, but they was indebted to these corporations. That's one reason why reparations can't be, will not be paid back, is because the money is coming from the corporations. And as we know, corporations are in business to make money. Now, understand what I'm saying, because I know I'm contradicting, because you know, if you look in my teachings before this video is uploaded, I'll talk about how other people were given reparations over us, but always understanding that the reparations that were given to different nations and people, they always would come back and recycle back into the greater society, so that the corporation would get on. The difference with most nations is that that money would circulate throughout their communities. One of the reasons, you know, that they're not gonna give us reparations is that they've, as I said in one of my sermons, they feel that since they gave us a seat into the inner workings of this American quote unquote experiment, that should be enough for us, that all the other races wasn't given an opportunity with that seat supposedly. But as we know, it has always been a farce. Whatever supposed position that we had, to sit down at the table with them was just an illusion, just like with the creation of the Boule, which means the advisor to the king, and basically to let the the powers that be know what's going on, being their eyes and their ears amongst us, and our people being aggrandized by these people that were quote unquote our leaders, um, thinking that they always had our best interest. Case in point is this is a book that me and my wife read many years ago. Thurgood Marshall, American Revolutionary by Warren Williams, who's a commentator on Fox News. In a nutshell, the book is about not a thorough, not a thorough uh, autobiography about him, but got enough information to let you know what kind of person that he was. I'm not gonna get into that because I have some things I would say about his character, but I'm not gonna get into that. I would just say this: one of the things that black people were complaining about is that we had our schools, we had our own neighborhoods, but of course, with the destruction of all the financial centers that black people had created, like Black Wall Street, Greenwood, Durham, North Carolina, and many, many other places, uh, black people were beholden to the federal and local governments for money to run these schools because they didn't want us to be an economic engine. They wanted to just piecemeal stuff out. And so most of the time they would go with old school books and things like that. So the strategy that was uh, thought of by Thurgood Marshall and others was like starting with the schools. I think it was up in Baltimore area. I think it was. It's been a long time since I read the book. They basically said, look, we've been petitioning the local school board because even though the black schools was not part of the white school district, they had to go to the white school district to ask them to get them materials for the schools. And of course, they kept denying them and saying, what you got is good enough. They said, well, it doesn't look like they're going to give us the books and stuff that we need. So then what we're going to do, we're going to sue them so that our children can go to their schools. Well, they have the newer books and things like that and call their bluff, and then they'll give us the money that we need. Well, in many of the instances, Thurgood Marshall, when he went to court, won some of the cases. And of course, the white school boards protested and everything, and you know, in many cases, they had to let the black students go to the white school. And so then they just seen that strategy, you know, get them a few victories, and then basically they decided to stick with that strategy of let's go in and not just now sue to get our children into their schools, but also start suing for our people to be able to get into their restaurants. I think it was the movie that won the Oscar this year, The Green Book. I think that was based on a true story of a black man that it was a musician that traveled down south, and of course it was certain restaurants and places that were white owned that you could not come in and eat or even use the facilities unless they had a black one, and how it was a book. It wasn't one book, but it was, they called it the Green Book. It was many copies throughout the black communities across the nation, but they just called it the Green Book, but it wasn't one book. But apparently in that book they had addresses of people's homes and different places where you as a black person, when you went down south, where you could go eat. You maybe go find a place to stay, sleep, or whatever. And apparently in the movie, the black man had a white man chauffeuring him around the south. I guess kind of like as a type of protection. I didn't watch the movie, and later on, I think the descendants of the man said that they embellished a lot of stuff about the movie I could be wrong, but I think they said the relationship between the black man and the white guy really just wasn't as cordial as they said it was. But this is the thing I think that was um, maybe realized by the powers that be, and maybe they had it in mind all along that okay, this will be a surefire way to make sure that we won't have to pay reparations if we. That's my son, Mike. Hi, Mike. Um, Surefire way that we won't have to pay reparations is if we, yes, let them engage with the white middle class, because understand the middle class is the economic engine of every nation, but basically there are people that the elite have allowed to step up a little higher and get some of the wealth, make them feel that they have some kind of power or whatever. And so understanding that we are nation builders, and that um, a lot of our abilities were um, um, going to waste. I think they said, "Hey, this is going to work out for us if we allow these some of these blacks to rise to middle class. Also, this is going to produce more money, but also we can create a tension between them two, where they'll be competing with one another." And as my lovely wife, I hear uh, she didn't come do the video with me this week. Hey, hey, baby.
Hey.
Um, um, let's show your face.
No, I'm not. Hey.
Oh, okay. Um, but they figure, hey, let's let's let them have at it, and we can also keep that tension, because one of the things that the elite like to do is the right left paradigm, because that that off that balance thing, they believe that keeps the universe in balance when you have two opposing forces. So they never want one thing to be over compensated in this way. You can create that tension between the white middle class and the whatever amount of people, or the black middle class, and all the time producing wealth. But that you would only allow certain amount of the black African American people to get to that position, while the ones left in the bottom, which would definitely have benefited from reparations, you had the small amount of black people that might be in the middle class who say, we don't need reparations, I got a good job or whatever, therefore creating more tension between the black middle class and those in poverty, because they're saying, of course you say we don't need reparations or we don't need this. That's why, well, Martin Luther King, uh, when he started waking up, he understood, hey, we need reparations. We need a leg up. It's not going to be this thing of just allowing us to try to compete with them. We'll never be able to compete with them because they got a bigger head start than us. We'll never be able to produce a big enough black middle class that can offset our lack of getting that start we needed after slavery and Jim Crow and all these other things that we had to go through that kept stalling us. And he said, in one of his speeches, he said, next time we come to Washington, we're coming for a check. Now, I don't know specifics of what he might have probably asked. He probably would have asked for a check, but I know definitely that he was going to ask for land. He was going to ask that the black farmers be getting more assistance and everything, like the white farmers that had came from Europe had been given land grants and everything, and also GI Bills and all these things that a lot of them were being denied. And so what did they do? They killed him. So if you see what they did to him when he started talking about money for us, then you can understand why not just mainly because of the curse, but also understand the curse is driven by the actions of others. Yah used the actions and intents of these people to continue, but now that Yah wants to bring us out of the curse, He's gonna use the hardening of these people's heart as His justification to judge the nations that have enslaved us, not just this nation, but France, England, all these places. Look at the Wimbush people, what they did to them. They pretty much kicked them out and sent them back to the Caribbeans. Now, there has been some articles that some of them got compensated for what they did, but I don't know if they brought them back to England. And I doubt if they do, and I would hope. But then the problem that a lot of them had when they went back to Jamaica, that they didn't come from Jamaica. They were born in England because their parents never got them the documentation that they need because they was told otherwise. They were kicked out, and then even some of their family that came there at work were kicked out, kicked back to the places. So, say this, we gotta pray. We gotta pray that Yah's vengeance goes forth, and that we make ourselves a righteous, not make ourselves, but we preach the message of Yeshua and being born again, being a new creature in Yeshua HaMashiach. You gotta be born again. It makes no sense to be praying and fasting and everything, and you're not born again. You are a sinner, and you need to be washed in the blood of Yeshua. The ceremonial law part of the law was done away with, and in the sense that the blood of bulls and goats and turtle doves and all that will not wash your sins away. You need to be born again through the blood of Yeshua HaMashiach, and you need to be baptized in water, and you need to be filled with His Spirit or His Ruach. And we believe the eyes haven't seen, neither ear heard, neither has it entered into the hearts of men the things that Yah has prepared for those that love Him, meaning that, yeah, they're not going to give us the reparation, but the stuff that Yah has prepared for us, it's not gonna compare. When, like I said in one of my sermons, he's prepared to give us the world back again. At the time that Solomon was ruling, for those 40 years, Israel was on top. The Bible said that gold was just like rocks on the street. Now we know it started dissolving into heresy when Solomon got into marrying foreign wives and following different religions and just getting out extravagant with the, getting the peacocks and all kinds of animals and all this kind of stuff. He just started flossing real hard, and how it caused economic turmoil in the nation with the taxation, just like Yah had told Samuel to tell the people, your king is going to multiply to himself wives from among you. He's going to get your best men being in his army. He's going to get your daughters to be bakers and confectioners and maids and all this stuff. And Solomon definitely played it up. But, when Yah, he's this time it's not going to be Solomon. It's going to be ruling from the throne of Israel. It's going to be Yeshua. And he's going to be a righteous king, a righteous judge, a righteous priest. He is the Son of Yah. He is worthy to be praised and worthy to be magnified. And I can't wait till He comes back. and restores the world back to the way it needs to be. You know, notice this ecological disasters that have going on in the earth. You know, with the melting of the polar ice caps, oil spills, fracking, um, sonar, 5G, 4G, microwaves throwing migration patterns off of birds and in the ocean, um, the death of the Pacific Ocean with Fukushima, with the spilling of the constant, not, but even, that's even say before Fukushima came, with all the widespread testing that they had of nuclear and hydrogen bombs in the Pacific. And then along comes Fukushima that pretty much, like I said, finished off a lot of life in the Pacific. I know that they show it's little spots here and there, but there's a lot of death in the Pacific Ocean. And now they're saying it's some kind of concrete dome where they had buried some radiation waste or something. I don't know. It was a massive concrete dome. I think they say radiation might be leaking into that and might be a more danger than what is happening with Fukushima. And we know that they don't have control of Fukushima, and that that thing is still probably ionizing and everything over in the area. And the Japanese people, because of the kind of society they were raised in, they're not gonna make a fuss about it. And they're not gonna. I think TEPCO was sued by the Japanese. I'm not sure if anybody won, but the way the Japanese society, they are raised to take a sword in the belly before dishonor or before dishonoring their country. So a lot of them might know that they might be getting ready to die of radiation 10, 15 years from now, but they probably never come out and put anything in the tabloid news to tell the world what's going on, and therefore ensure their death and the death of all the different nations in the Pacific, which is one reason why I think Kim Jong-il is probably doing what he's doing. He understands that the Pacific is dying and dead, and he's probably trying to let China know that he's on the same stage, world stage as them, so that he can start trying to go to some countries too, like China is expanding all around the world, trying to get away from that part of the earth. So just a little talk tonight. Wasn't, a lot of scripture being read, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate that because it is very important. And then you do see a lot of judgments that I believe a judgment from the Most High Yah that's spreading across the earth. So I want you to continue to pray out strength in me, Yah. I tried to find a book about biblical eldership. Apparently I can't find it. I'll look again. But I wanted to talk about that next time, maybe. And also, one of the things that I really feel down in my spirit, my ruach, is this Hebrew Israelite understanding is to me kind of like a deja vu, like I was stating last time when my wife was with me, about how in the early 80s, mid 80s, how it was great enthusiasm, and there was a lot of teachings about walking in the Spirit, being baptized in the Spirit, and everything. But one of the things too was the music. They had the choir music, but one of the things that I liked it, but at that time when I came into the Christianity thing, you had the rise of the Christian rappers. DC Talk. I used to have DC Talk. I had a guy named Reverend Rhyme, but they never seemed to take off. They was kind of what some people would call whack. Not all of them. I think Reverend Rhyme and there was some other ones that I listened to that were to me were pretty decent, but they never took off. But I always envisioned the day. I said, man, it'd be good if they could have. And so now, before I actually came into this Hebrew Israelite understanding, I used to like a lot of the rap that was done by the Reform rappers, you know, Christ-centric. Yeah, I really like. I can't think of his name right now. He's big in the Reform rapper thing, but to see all this and then the rap artists that are in some of the Hebrew, not the heretic Hebrew camps now, but some of the ones that's kind of copacetic. I was like, man, this is the stuff I used to envision and dream, but I wouldn't have never believed it would have got to this level of artistic, I don't want to say perfection, but to be able to hear some of them take the scriptures and just flow it in a rap form, to me is truly, you know, something that I thought about back then, but I never thought I seen today, and also to see it being effectively used to minister to the young people. That's, I believe, back at that time, if we could have had that, you probably would have got even more. But we dealt with what we dealt with. We dealt with the choirs. But I think that's why when Fred Hammond came along and some of the other, you know, they was kind of reaching into that kind of R&B kind of thing and a little bit of the, you know, the dances of the late 80s, early 90s. He drew a large crowd because a lot of us had wanted, we liked the choirs, it was okay, but we wanted to kind of have that street kind of song, not more of the, you know, kind of wimpy, whining kind of thing, like, oh Lord. We wanted to have that, yeah, and you know, it just when you had DC Talk, that's what it. But then later on, they became kind of like a rock and roll type thing. But I do know that there was years ago the rise of the hip hop churches, and I seen a couple of them. I didn't go to them now, of course, but I seen videos about a couple of them in the 90s where they would have the turntable in the pulpit and they would have people on the stage kind of rhyming and rapping, but it wasn't like ministry. It was more like kind of the Reform rappers was kind of able to kind of codify it and put it into and thing. And then, you know, G. Craig, you know, he was kind of and you used to listen to some of G. Craig's interviews he used to do on his podcast. You know, he played the keyboards. You would hear some of his keyboard music, and it would kind of emulate some of the beats and stuff that you was hearing in the hip hop. So it's been kind of perfected, and you can kind of in your mind envision that when the kingdom of Yah comes here to earth, that we thinking it's gonna be a bunch of choirs and chorales and stuff like, which I have no doubt there will be. I hope it's not a bunch of wimpy, soppy kind of thing, but I envision, you know, that artistic expression that we as black people have brought out, and we are the people, that you will see the art, the rap, rhyming and everything, because if you think about Yah, and the creativity that he put in us, that if it's giving praise to his word, giving praise to him, and there's not no vulgarity and everything, that Yah is well pleased with that, as he would with a sermonic solo with a 50-person choir, which, to be quite frank, depending on what kind of choir it was, I probably would rather hear the rap song given, because one of the things I think coming, like I said, coming out of the 80s and the 90s with these choirs is that it brought in a lot of the kind of wimpy, kind of homosexual sounding kind of black male singer, you know, where on some of the albums you would think it was a woman singing, but it would actually be a man singing a solo. I can remember that on one particular album, I'm not gonna name it, but I used to like the song per se, but then when I went back and I looked at the album thing credits, and it was talking that it was a man. I was like, man, I always thought that part was sung by a woman. So that's why it's good. Now, I'm not discouraging, and I think you should have, get a group, because we know when Yeshua was born in Bethlehem, the Bible said that the angels were on high, but actually, I correct myself, they wasn't singing, they were saying peace on earth and goodwill toward all men. So I had to correct myself. The angels was not, now more than likely, because angels are mighty and great, them talking probably was melodious to the shepherds that was abiding in the field, which it wasn't in December. It was during the time when it was warm, so it was more like probably August or September, when Yeshua was born. But yeah, reparations, the kingdom to come. These are all the things that we are going to be able to do when we come into the kingdom, because we are not getting our reward now. We're going to get our reward later, when those of us that make it into the kingdom. I pray that I'll be able to make it in the kingdom. I pray, like I said, we had that opportunity, and it's a younger group coming now that has the visions. We kind of got the dreams and things going on, and thinking about stuff that happened back, and say, hey, we had the same thing, but you got to go with the train that's running now. That train that I was on is parked back in the boneyard. But every now and then, sometimes you can go to the boneyard and get parts off of that to put on to maybe that engine, because you can't find a part somewhere else, and that part off of that works just as well. So maybe some of the things that we as the old heads, as we used to call people back then, which we are now, some of us old heads can impart some things, but not too many, because we know, like you was talking about the new wineskin, old wineskins. As you know, in one of my sermons, I said the wineskins is you, not something you carry around on your shoulder. Yes, that's all I had to say. Be blessed.